Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of our Tanzu webinars. Today, we've got a great talk set up to talk about generative AI, the realities of generative AI, and what business leaders need to know. Just real quick, I wanted to point out that if you do have questions during the presentation, you can move over to the Controls tab and find a Questions tab where you can ask questions during the presentation. And then at the end of the presentation, our lovely presenters will take the time to go through the questions and we will answer what you need to know. So without any further hesitation, let me pass it over to Matt and Amelia, and they can kick things off for us.
Hey, everybody. Just quickly, so quick agenda. I'm going to introduce us and what we're going to go through. And then fundamentally, the way that the webinar is going to go is a number of questions that we have been asked repeatedly. We're going to go through them, kind of our answers, demo some of the real life examples that we found to support those answers. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to post them, and then we're going to get to them at the end. First off, so introduction. Hi, my name is Matthew Quinn. I'm a senior product manager here at Tanzu Labs, and my co-host is Amelia Mendez. She's also a senior product manager at Tanzu Labs. We've been working to explore generative AI's role in our work and our clients' work for the last 6 months. And what we found was that we were answering a lot of the same questions from individually different clients, and that the misunderstandings that led to those questions were ultimately the same. And that's kind of what inspired this webinar. So it was, hey, let's review the same themes that are coming up and the same misunderstandings are coming up, so that especially so that people who don't necessarily have the time to get into the nitty-gritty and get an opinion, like you can just have the answer when someone asks you a question about this area. You don't necessarily have to know all of the details and specifics on how that works.
So for those of you who don't know us, we are part of VMware Tanzu Labs. We're essentially the consulting arm of VMware. We're here to jump our journey, figure out how we can get to quick wins. And we really like to focus on starting small and scaling fast in order to help you sort of achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Just a quick refresher, the methodologies that we really like to focus on is lean product management, user-centered design, and extreme programming. So you're going to hear statements about lean experimentation, validating assumptions, including user interviews and research, as well as our dependency on test-driven development, paired programming, continuous integration, and continuous deployment. So what is generative AI and what makes it different from existing machine learning and AI? So AI and generative AI is a broad and loosely defined subject area. We'll not cover all aspects of generative AI for your organization today, but we'd like to harness the recent interests and excitement of our clients and the companies we work with, much of which stem from the recent advantages with large language models. And so if you're here for a deeper understanding of how generative AI is used in application development and in engineering, I encourage you to stay tuned to further communication of upcoming webinars, or maybe even reach out for more information on office hours or workshops that we can do with your team. You can also reach out to us at ai101@groups.vmware.com.
Cool. So this is a question that we get quite often. Hey, the news was talking about generative AI. Why is this different from all of the machine learning my tech team have talked about for a decade? And fundamentally, the 4 things that I find myself repeating are, firstly, to start using it. It obviously has a lower investment, and there's not much training needed for anybody to start using generative AI tools or building with generative AI models. It's a lot cheaper. So off the top of my head, like the most well-known generative AI tool is going to be ChatGPT. It's $20 a month, but actually, if you start building with an OpenAI model, you're talking about cents, and you could do that in minutes. It's easily accessible, so anybody with access to the internet pretty much can access this tool. And then, quite interestingly, like the way that large language models work is that they interpret language. So you don't need to learn any new necessarily like skills or formats to interact with the models. You don't need to be an engineer. A random person somewhere on the planet can just write English into one of these tools and it will work. Another one I get quite a lot is ChatGPT a large language model? It's quite a foundational understanding to break these two out. So ChatGPT really is a generative AI product or powered product built on a large language model that's created by OpenAI. It processes language inputs in the form of chat. It has fixed settings on its scenario and why it's giving you an answer, and also on the amount of like hallucination it's allowed. So this is why we get funny ChatGPT answers that kind of go crazy. And if you wanted to if you wanted to add all the information you need to add to get the right answer you want, needs to be added in the prompt itself, as opposed to a large language model, which is what ChatGPT is built on top of. That's the base generative AI model, which will still continue to process language inputs, but you can build that for very specific use cases. You can set the context and the scenarios outside of the prompts. And when we are thinking about building generative AI products, really you want to break these two things out. You know, any member of your team could probably use ChatGPT. Your engineers are going to be building products using a large language model that they plug into. So another question which very commonly comes up: can you stop generative AI from hallucinating? This is where you ask it a question and it can easily just kind of go off on a side tangent, or quite frankly, just make stuff up. Fundamentally, hallucination is a feature, not a bug. So hallucination is what powers the creativity of one of these models. It's why you can ask ChatGPT to write you an email as a CEO trying to send an order, and it will just write a completely new piece of content for you. It's there by design. And some of those situations do call for that creativity and that hallucination, like the one I just gave you an example of. But you can tune it. So fundamentally, hallucination happens by what is called a temperature with these models. The temperature can be turned up to absolute chaos and also turned down to 0. On a 0 side, you have absolutely no hallucination based on the context that you've given it. That can lead to some really interesting use cases. So you can prove this yourself. There's a tool out there right now called pdf.ai. This is something I've done a couple of times. I uploaded my built-in oven manual from my house, made by General Electric. You can ask it all sorts of questions about what's in the document, and then you can ask it, who was the first president of America, and it will not give me that answer, even though the large language model that this is built on, which is, I think, GPT 3.5 from OpenAI, should know that the first president of America was George Washington. It will not give me that answer because the temperature is set to 0, hard-coded in this product, and that is not in this oven manual. Flip side, a product like Bard will hallucinate without regret. So I uploaded a picture of, you can't see this in this, oh, I can't see this on my screen, but I uploaded a picture of the old Stapleton Airport from Denver, which was the previous airport before Denver International. It's now a housing community built on top of the airport where I happen to live. And Bard knows that it's Denver-ish airport and then goes to explain and describe the photo to me of things that are not in the photo. So it's actually describing, if this is a photo of Denver International today, what that looks like. But none of those features in this description are in that photo. And this is what kind of core hallucination looks like. Bard is obviously a newer, more experimental model and does hallucinate quite a bit. It can be very scary when it starts effectively lying to you. But fundamentally, the point being that PDF AI temperature is set to 0. Bard will have a plus, greater than 0 temperature setting in their model. Should we encourage teams to use it? So when I get asked this question, fundamentally, the first thing I always say is, people are already using this. Unfortunately, you just might not be able to track that usage. When you start with that as the baseline, you can have a much more peaceful kind of step forwards. Okay, so they are using it now. Now what? Fundamentally, the technology and the tools and then the baseline technology should increase your team's productivity, or could increase your team's productivity. And so, if you are more open to an increased productivity in your team, you probably want to be embracing generative AI tools and also thinking about building with generative AI models. The best practice we've seen is to put kind of critical IP rules in place. so that you almost say, okay, you can use it internally, but definitely never touch it on kind of top secret documents. And that starts to build much safer mutual respect internally. And then the kind of fourth piece is what I think no organization wants to do is ignore something until it's too late. So if you can encourage your teams to use it, even though it might not be in the most business critical way, familiarity with the technology and the tools will help avoid disruption when you decide to build a product using generative AI models, or when you decide to adopt a fundamentally new kind of tool or paradigm that uses AI internally as well. Can generative AI be made safe to protect my IP? It's a question that comes up a lot. So the answer is yes, it can be made to protect IP. I think a lot of organizations in the earlier models, as they came out, organizations saw that it couldn't be made to protect your IP, and so just said, oh, we're not going to use this in any way, shape, or form. It currently can. So it can be made HIPAA compliant. You can get HIPAA compliant models through Azure and a couple other places as well. Today, that means that you can pass, in theory, your medical data through to a large language model. So we'll go into some examples of this in a second, but there are healthcare companies today that are building with these tools and using patient data. And then very, very soon we'll have full data security. So if you are Lockheed Martin and you're scared about putting schematics of your next missile or plane or something into generative AI, we easily are kind of 6 months away from changing the model, or having a model that is air gapped from OpenAI, such that you can continue to work on those things and use AI on what are effectively like top secret classified documents. Some examples of this. So I don't know if any of you have heard of Carbon Health. It's a fully vertically integrated healthcare provider in the US. They put one of the HIPAA compliant GPT models into their product, and the average doctor in their products were taking 16 minutes to write doctor's notes. Now they take 4 minutes on average. And to do that, you have to use a HIPAA compliant model. There's another client of mine at Labs that is in the healthcare space that is uploading 1,500-page healthcare records into a large language model to get it to understand if there are undiagnosed chronic illnesses, and they can only do that through a HIPAA compliant model. So there's some very, very interesting stuff in the space there. And then just preview some other tools. So Lamini is working on a product where enterprises will be able to take models and completely deploy them in their own kind of private cloud, and you will just have a license of a model. You won't have to pass any information over to OpenAI or these other third-party providers. And then even Evervault has a special kind of anonymization technology where you can. This is being used in a banking context, so you can pass customer details and balances through AI models in a special way, such that you don't have to worry about IP bleed.
So how does my organization embrace this technology safely? So as always, we want to focus on true problems to solve business value. We want to really focus on product value. This is not the time to stray away from human-centered design and lead product management. Continue to validate your risky assumptions and apply the technology at those points. When it's possible, you're going to want to educate your teams and set clear guidelines on IP and personal data. As with anything, you're going to want to iterate and update your stance as you learn more and become more comfortable with technology. Keep an open conversation with your teams as you learn more about these boundaries. Continue to break down silos and avoid hostile policies to allow your organization to work together. And of course, we want everyone to have fun. Continue to support experimentation. New technology is exciting. We want to consider integrating on low-risk projects. For example, internal practices, internal processes are a great place to start. This can help you build your practice with AI and productionize the use of new tools. Of course, when doing that, we always recommend using CI/CD to see quicker outcomes and continue to follow a demand-driven architecture strategy in order to improve the accessibility of and ownership of data within the organization.
Cool. So another question that comes up quite a bit is, what are the constraints? You know, am I going to miss the boat? Are we all going to be put out of jobs in the next 12 months? And quite interestingly, the truth is that there are some pretty foundational constraints to AI just taking over and replacing everybody. Fundamentally, to build a large language model and then run a large language model uses a huge amount of energy. And there is definitely kind of discussion as to if, say, Europe, which is highly energy constrained, will be able to innovate in this space versus America, which isn't that energy constrained and seems to be kind of pulling out the main innovation here. There are compute requirements as well. So we have to use a lot of, GPU and computing power to train one of these models and then also to run one of these models. And the world is quite aggressively computationally constrained. There is a large backlog to order chips. I think it's currently like a 3-year backlog. So the idea that we're just going to be able to build faster and faster and faster language models that are going to ultimately get so good so fast that I won't be able to work anymore is just physically not possible there. Additionally, compute manufacturing is politically sensitive. So most of the world's chips come from Taiwan, which is in this kind of gray area of conflict currently. And there's definitely discussion of American onshoring, but the speed at which we want to do that versus the kind of global demand for computing power, and especially when it comes to large language models, there's just a massive mismatch there. Finally as well, the world's best kind of AI models are slow and rate limited. So if you use GPT-4 currently, there are limits to you using the GPT-4 language models from OpenAI as an example. I know teams that are working with this, as an anecdote, teams that are working with this to, say, transcribe and enlighten different business meetings, they are running out of credits within the first hour of their call. So the idea that there are generative AI powered tools using the cutting edge kind of models currently in a commercial scale is just nonsense. That the two things don't match up. So there are faster, better models that are there and that are coming, but they are so aggressively rate limited that you can't, to build a product with them would almost be very risky.
So how can we use it today? So with the recent rise of language-based services and tools, teams can experiment with essentially every phase of the software development lifecycle. In the discovery phase, solutions are available for synthesis and analysis of human behavior, prioritization, and rapid prototyping. For engineers, we see tools for continuous code review, self-healing errors, and monitoring. For customer-facing tooling, that's available. There's onboarding, training, and potentially support. And for operations teams, reporting can be streamlined and even compliance requirements. At this point, every part of your business should consider what new possibilities are out there, what opportunities there are, whether it is with existing tooling that's off the shelf or creating your own model.
Some fun and exciting kind of demos and tools here I just wanted to show on the back of this one. So the first example is I've written a user story and I've added this to ChatGPT and said, hey, can you improve this user story? And it's gone through step by step and suggested different ways in which I can improve the user story. And then it's rewritten the user story, which I did that in seconds, right? That if you think about another experienced product professional needing to review my user story, we start talking about in multiples of time. So I like to use this as a good example. I like to think I'm pretty good at writing user stories, but I will still, if I can in a safe IP way, use this as an assistant. The second example is a Ruby on Rails product I was building. I hit an error log and I had no idea what it was. I just copied and pasted it, dumped it in ChatGPT. I didn't even say, hey, this is an error log from a Ruby on Rails application. What is it? I just dumped it in. ChatGPT immediately knows what it is, can tell me what the error is, and then starts suggesting steps moving forwards. There's an interesting kind of discussion I've had with a number of engineers around in their view, what differentiates a junior dev and a senior dev is the ability to debug when things go wrong and fix, learn, and move forwards. And when I've showed them this, that if they hadn't used it this way or thought about using it this way, I would highly encourage, in an IP safe way, every junior dev to be using this to troubleshoot the errors they're hitting. And then just a fun tool to flag out, which is groupthink. The groupthink AI is almost building like the executive assistant that every team should have. It's as a product, you install it into your team. It will see there's a meeting on the calendar, see there's no agenda set. It will go and reach out to everybody in the team, get their agenda items, write an agenda, share the agenda out. In the meeting, it will transcribe the meeting. It will write down who agreed to what action points and what was agreed. And then after the meeting, it will go and share those things back out. And ultimately, I think the goal is that it's then going to chase people and keep them accountable as well. But yeah, these are just some very light flavors of things on how you could use these tools today.
So can generative AI replace my staff? Yes, and you need engineers. You might want to consider human and change systems. And you should really change the model of thinking from replace to augment. Many of these tools provide an opportunity to experiment and optimize processes within your organization, like pipeline, lead generation, project management, or automation tools before them. As long as your goals and operational pain points are clear, teams can experiment with them to evolve their roles and reduce the manual steps. While generative tools may be a lean way to experiment with part of your product, processes, or architecture, it's not going to replace it in totality. You still need to have shared knowledge of your applications and an understanding of how each domain interacts. Human and change systems are strongly recommended, and the operational cost is also to be considered. Just like any product, acceptance testing during the development phase, as well as user testing, is going to be necessary to validate if you're solving the use case you have targeted. You want to identify the critical cases and monitor its response. A model can and will shift with time, and it's highly likely that your team will need to be able to review its output. So just as I mentioned before, remember to change your model from thinking about replacing your team, but really to augmenting how can you enhance the skills they already have. And then as you are reflecting upon this, we actually will have resources that are coming up and also that we have available now that can help you through this sort of transition within your company. I recommend our white paper on data science and balanced teams. Matt here has also written a great article on how to, about product strategy and how to evaluate using generative AI. And of course, going back to our basics on domain-driven design, our engineering product playbooks, as well as our design playbooks as well. All right, and with that, we'd love to go into questions. We have some pretty great specific questions. So if you have any questions, we recommend you to add it into the chat, either for myself or Matt. Matt has a lot of experience directly with these tools. Myself, who might be more at a higher level, high-level view with architecture and product management.
Awesome. So I can grab some of these ones for you guys, and I will read them out. So the first one we've got is, should hallucination ideally be set to 0 all the time?
I'll take this one. So fundamentally, the way I would think about it is, what is the business value that you are trying to create, or what is the kind of user problem you're trying to solve? If you are building, off the top of my head, you're taking 1,000 documents about the tax code. You're trying to build a chat product with the US tax code, and you want someone to be able to interact with that. The temperature should absolutely be set to 0. You don't want it making up any answers. You want it to just pull from what it actually knows in those documents. But if you are talking about building a customer service agent for maybe a fun brand like Disney, you probably would want to add a non-zero number in your temperature such that it can be creative and have a creative, more creative voice. This is just kind of two anecdotes off the top of my head, but fundamentally, it's going to come down to the user problem you're trying to solve and the business value you're trying to create, and kind of the context in there. Good question there.
I kind of go back to the concept of known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And sometimes when you're either working with one of these tools for ideation, you're going to want to encourage creativity, but also let's say you're trying to generate potential risks that you may not have foreseen, and you can deal with the risk that is taking on the extra burden of sorting through the responses, then it's kind of a go higher on the hallucinations.
Awesome. Okay, another question we've got here, it says, could you please repeat what you said about designers using ChatGPT and perhaps go into more detail? And maybe we can expand on this and talk about, any other tools you have experience with on design and generative AI as well.
Yeah, I think I can take a little bit of that. I mentioned it in the discovery phase. And so there are some tools that you can use, or you'll see features that are actually starting to be launched within products you're already using, like Figma or Miro. And especially when it comes to things like synthesis or sort of whittling down from information that you've already fed into whatever the product is. There's sort of other areas that you can consider as well when it comes to finding generated solutions of designs, UIs. I still like when it comes to using any of these products, I wouldn't copy them word for word. It's more about having a pair or a partner that you can work with to help you kind of push that next phase. And then there's also the example, that Matt gave, which I was going to refer to. I'm sure you're about to mention it.
I wasn't going to speak to this, maybe a specific example. I was just going to think from a design standpoint, the two ways I've also seen it used is synthesizing large bodies of user research. So putting that into a chat interface backed by a large language model and saying, hey, what are the main insights here? And all of a sudden, you don't need a team of junior researchers. You're using kind of more senior people to evaluate large bodies of data. And I would say on a creative side, I have seen, so Midjourney is kind of the one everybody knows, where you write a text prompt and it just generates a completely new AI image, generated by AI. I have seen that used for kind of design inspiration. So if you have your brand guidelines and you want a landing page, or you're going to want a new app interface, you can upload those into a Midjourney prompt and say, hey, design me an app interface. Whatever it produces, you can't turn into an app because it's got language, it's got letters for a language that doesn't exist as it's trying to interpret all languages and put it into the design. But for someone who's potentially not completely out there creative, it can be really, really interesting to see some of the concepts it comes up with. I've seen that on a project which was dealing with a nonprofit that's trying to lobby against certain fossil fuel usage, and the website kind of designs that Midjourney came up with were it left me speechless. They were so impactful, lots of yellows and blacks and oil and sun, and it gave them a really good starting point for, okay, we like this, we don't like this. This is how we should think about our new brand guidelines and how we're gonna do that design. What was the example, Amelia? Sorry.
I was going to say your example that you gave about pairing for story writing.
I guess I didn't necessarily put it on the design side, but I think you can so most large language models are built on the same, I think, list of 100 databases of knowledge, which fundamentally all live on the internet. And so there is a skill in understanding that when you lean on, say, ChatGPT as an example, it has the experience of the internet. It also has the downside of the internet, but you can use it as a coach or as a reviewer on a lot of the work you do. So if you are designing things, I don't know, from an image standpoint, it can get a bit tricky, but definitely if you're writing things, you can have it review you or review your work, and it should use the best practices of the internet to help guide whatever you've worked on, which I find as a, I actually find that to be really impactful as someone who doesn't necessarily spend their day writing, that instead of having a massive kind of code shift in your brain as, oh, I now need to sit down and write, you can get a first draft of something or get something reviewed real quick and then move back to, you know, being fundamentally on phone calls or whatever the main focus of your day is.
Awesome. So here's another question that I think is interesting from the kind of product management perspective. With the onset of the AI era, the kind of additional interest in the space, will roadmap or evolution of, say, any product or service become uncontrolled and irrelevant? So kind of how does AI impact the product roadmap? I think this is an interesting one.
I can give you a spicy take on this one, or I can give you where I've settled. I've spoken to a number of companies that are building with generative AI models, the large language models. They're trying to build generative AI tooling and generative AI powered tooling. And I think right now the opinion is split as to how much we stick to the ways that we're used to working and how much chaos is about to come down the pipeline. I think anybody can predict anything, and so nobody can really predict what is actually going to happen. With the range of chaos in those two barriers is so large that the way I've managed to sleep at night is to go, okay, what are the fundamental principles that are going to hold true? And I think I put this in kind of the piece around product strategy, which is users are going to have problems and we're going to want to solve those problems to create business value. The thing that generative AI makes kind of interesting is there are problems that you thought were important that will disappear because the problem above them will disappear. Also, there are problems that you thought you could never solve because it would be so technically impossible that now generative AI could solve. The example I like to give is you can I showed you the PDF AI. You can upload your energy bill to PDF.ai and ask it, what was my energy? How much electricity did I use in March? And it will tell you how much electricity you used in March. To build a tool that will take any electricity bill and understand how much electricity you used in March across all of the energy providers in America would be completely technically insane. So if you're a solar energy provider, as an example, that's a problem that you can't solve. But all of a sudden you can solve that using large language models or using generative AI. So from a road mapping standpoint, that's kind of the way that I've managed to not lose my mind thinking about it is, can we reevaluate the problems that we had said wouldn't be able to solve, and then the problems that we think we're going to solve, are they going to maintain to be problems as other pieces in the space are moving? The foundational principles of road mapping, doing your user research, understanding the value you want to create, and also trying to deliver kind of the minimum viable product are still there. And I think if you get carried away and you don't keep your eye on those processes, you'll end up nowhere. I do know that it has been discussed that there is an era coming within the next couple of years where products will repeatedly expire. The problems will just be solved and solved and solved by the next piece of AI, But even revisiting the constraint slide, that's just physically not possible. Is kind of the conclusion I've personally come to. And if you disagree with that, totally fine. But it's not a skeptic's conclusion. There's physical constraints that will kind of stop us from getting there.
Awesome. So we've got tons of questions coming in, which is great. We've got lots of time scheduled for this webinar, so we can keep going for a little bit here. I'll keep going. Matt, I think this one is great. We talked a bit about during the presentation using proprietary data with a large language model. Can you maybe elaborate a bit more on kind of what's out there to kind of help keep that private and not keep that out of the public kind of model?
Sure. So I haven't personally seen, other than from a HIPAA compliance standpoint, I haven't personally seen this demonstrated yet. The discussions I've had around it with people building in the space and people wanting to use those models is when can I use my client's code base in one of these tools? And will that ever happen? And so the way I've thought about it is it going to happen? Yes or no? Yes. And then is it going to happen far away or short term? And my answer is I think it's going to happen short term. There are smart teams working on doing this right now. The way they're working on doing it makes complete sense. The money involved, the incentives to make this work is so high that like the timeline I give always changes, but I think within 6 months. So Lemon AI is working on something really interesting where you effectively kind of white label / license an OpenAI model. You deploy it in your private space, and then none of that information ever gets passed back to OpenAI. So fundamentally, you're just running code internally that's not touching the internet. That should keep it safe. I think the example I was using was Lockheed Martin. I think the truth is Lockheed Martin probably would not want to use these tools for a number of years, right? Like at enterprise level, you don't necessarily want to adopt the most shiniest thing immediately. You want to know it's safe over a long period of time. It's going to have to go through a whole bunch of security audits too. But fundamentally, from an infrastructure standpoint, it will be either two things: anonymizing the data that gets passed to a third-party large language model, or deploying a white label version of a large language model on your private space. And those things, I would say strongly that you could do one of those. Well, you could do those within 6 months.
Awesome. Keep it going here. Can you elaborate on the human in the loop concept as a general approach?
Yeah, I think I can elaborate a bit more on that. So with generative AI, it's essentially a live system, and it's a system that evolves and changes over time, and that's a key feature of and why you're using it. But of course, there's going to be more unknowns, and that's going to increase the amount of risk. And so there's a concept called human in the loop, which is the idea that you're using human involvement in order to set up the systems, tune and test them, and kind of improve the decision making over time. This could actually be something you do within your operations, but also could be something that is customer facing, and can be sort of not crowdsourced, that might be the wrong term, but used as a way to take feedback and bring that back into the system as well. I believe strongly in it. I think it's very important. And I'm big on kind of policy and regulation of new systems. I'm very excited about the new technology. And I think the idea of having human in loop goes back to our core beliefs on making sure that there's shared knowledge of your system, what it's doing at all times. And whether this is built with AI or not, you want to be able to make sure that there actually is that sort of interaction. And it's almost an evolution of eating your own dog food in a way. And so I recommend looking into. There's many different ways you can kind of like set up a human in the loop system at different parts of the whole cycle of building an in-house model. You can bring it in. And so I definitely recommend looking further into it. And I'm hoping in the future we'll have some webinars a little bit on it, but I might be reaching a little bit there. We'll see. Yeah, I hope that answers a little bit. I think it's actually a good question that kind of leans into the next one about QA.
Yeah, for sure. So this one's really interesting. Does the testing team or QA, what are they needed for in the kind of Gen AI process? What tools or languages should they be looking at incorporating, or really just kind of like how do you connect those workflows?
Yeah. And so for me, that's also a good evolution of the question about human in the loop as well, because they're both questions that are dealing with risk. And so you kind of want to look at how complex a decision is that your model is making, how much damage it could cause. Do you need a subject matter expert? Is there domain knowledge that just isn't able to be brought in just by like a data set? And so any of these areas that kind of increases the risk. And so that's a good point where you want to really focus any efforts on QA, or you want to have that human interaction. Now QA and human in the loop isn't the exact same concept, but I think it's a natural progression where I could see the same tenets of being able to focus on QA based on a user flow and based on a risk, rather than just as like a flat out policy is a good approach to take.
I'll just add that, like, a question that we get asked that we didn't add to this presentation is around testing the model outputs, that I think has come up as months have gone on and people are trying to build with it. We haven't seen a good way to test the output of a large language model consistently. And so just to reinforce kind of Amelia's point, that's where you almost want to put the human in some ways to review what's coming out before it goes to the user, other than in a situation where the temperature is set to 0. So the example I gave with my client, where they're uploading 1,500-page medical record, originally they wanted to fully automate that, and they just very quickly got to a point where it was like, we're going to upload a 1,500-page medical record. We're going to use a large language model to flag insights that a human can review, because we cannot find a way to test that the output there is gonna make sense.
I think there's two questions that are like kind of interesting to ask together. One asks, is using ChatGPT to, say, write a 10 to 20 page document of text any different than using it to kind of pull together some functions and write a piece of software from it? And then there's also a question that asks about, at some point, does Gen AI need to be more, like, is a better name for it in the future? Should it be responsible AI? And I think those are interesting questions, because you can say, like, in theory, ChatGPT, you can use it for a lot of these different types of activities, but the output, you do need to think about kind of how you're coming together and what it's being used for. So maybe you can expand a bit on, like, the differences of kind of using a prompt to say, generate some text versus generate working software. Like, where do you need to consider being a responsible user of AI across the process?
I'll take this one. So it's an interesting framing. The way I'm thinking about it is, if you're using AI to generate, I think the example you gave is 20-page piece of text. I've tried that. That's interesting. I very quickly learned that, like, I'm not a good editor, and so to pass that off potentially as my own work, or continue without aggressively editing and re-understanding everything that was written, is both highly unethical, but just massively risky. If you're writing a 20-page document, who are you writing it for, such that, like, you didn't write that and could get away with it, would be a pretty big question for me. I will give the caveat that I have seen it used in this context, where you take kind of masses of bullet points on, say, a white paper outline that you have, and you say, hey, can you synthesize this into a written document? And then you are taking your base knowledge, turning it into language, and it's a lot easier to edit that way. There's definitely a piece in there which is, I guess what I'm almost saying is, like, garbage in, garbage out. Like, if you're more comfortable with the inputs, maybe the outputs you could kind of say are closer to yours, but it's a very wide question to answer in a concise way, from a I think business ethics standpoint. I think it's almost like if you got someone to do your homework, right? Like, you're going to get someone to do your homework, you can submit that as your homework, but, like, do you really feel safe that the teacher is not going to know that that's your homework, and that you even kind of can back up that answer? That would be my thinking on that one. From writing a piece of code standpoint, I'm definitely have a different opinion on this as some other people, from an ethics standpoint. When you are I've learned to code from an indie standpoint, and one of the things you get taught is, like, Google problems when you don't have the answer, and, like, just take the code off Stack Exchange and, like, paste it in your application. And a lot of engineers will agree that, like, they find a new language, or they find a new issue they've never seen before, they Google it, they go on Stack Exchange, they move forward that way. Stack Exchange makes up about the entire knowledge base of Stack Exchange makes up about 6% of what all of the kind of commercially available large language models were trained on. So you're kind of still doing the same thing. There's a much larger discussion on IP and who owns that, and the ethics around that. But I have asked ChatGPT, as an example, to write code for me, and then I've taken template code and pasted it into an application and run it, and it worked. It created the ugliest feature I've ever seen, but it worked, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I don't know if that answered the question.
I'm kind of holding out more for using, I guess I love the application of it more in code review or as a pair, as a partner that you can reflect on when you're writing your code, or maybe a future of like regenerative code, self-healing code, or sort of automation of automated tests, unit tests, etc. So I'm more about that. How can you augment a workflow you already have, but based on your actual information that you're putting in, the actual work that you're already doing?
There's a question here. I appreciate Evan, you're the MC, but I'll just take this question. This question here from Vikas. How does generative AI like ChatGPT get me an answer? In a traditional product, there's a database backend where it gets its response. Can you explain the basic computation it does? The best way I have found to explain it is a large language model based on all of the language input that is trained on can predict the next word output based on the prompt and the existing output. So the way that something like ChatGPT works is you write a prompt, it kind of should know through its learning how to start answering that prompt, and then every word that it writes, it will take the prompt and basically the words that it's already written and write the next word, which is how you get hallucination if you think about it. In a game of telephone, right, when you get to the 9th word, you can kind of just go off crazy on the side. That's kind of the base way I try and explain it. It's not necessarily this genius product. It is really predicting the next word based on the last couple of words that it's given. What is the best user experience I've seen for utilizing LLMs, or we've seen? I don't know if Amelia, if you have an example here. I'm trying to think of the best one I've seen.
I think it's going to be the ones that are unknown. This is where I get more skeptical, where it's when things are, it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and they talk too much about how they cook the food, and instead of just actually listing like what the beauty of the ingredients are. Sorry, that might have been a little over the top explanation, but for me, it's the products that you don't notice are using learning language models or AI. It's essentially, it should be seamless, and it shouldn't be the focus. What technology you're using shouldn't be the main sell. And so I'm hoping it's something that you're kind of, something you're already using. Maybe, there's Google, Apple, those guys. They've mixed it in early on.
I'd say I could speak to a specific one. I won't. I'll give you some background. But one of the interesting loops that we've been through for months is people saying, what can it do? And then trying to find out what it can do. And it can only do what we've made it do. So otherwise you can just kind of predict it can do anything. It can only really do what humans have made it do so far, the technology. And then I'd say 70% of the cool things that humans have made this technology do is not public yet. The tools are still being built, the models are still being grappled with. I fortunately have been able to see a lot of stuff in kind of beta. The best user experience coming, fingers crossed, that I've seen is just a Slack bot that can understand all of the Jira tickets that have gone through in a week, all of the kind of GitHub commits, all of the core public conversations in Slack, and writes a weekly kind of drumbeat update for a whole organization and says product did this, engineering did this, marketing did this, design did this. And I've seen that demo. That I thought was very, very slick. I've spent a lot of time writing updates on what different teams have done week by week. At the same time, I'd say 1 out of 3 weeks, that bot just makes up conversations that didn't happen in Slack. So they never actually may make that tool public.
Awesome. So just a bit of housekeeping before we wrap up for today. I wanted to point out that in the attachments tab in BrightTalk, you'll find a bunch of resources that we referred to throughout the presentation, and some we didn't as well. I'd specifically like to highlight, we've got a great white paper called Data Science and the Balanced Teams, which is a great intro to kind of bringing this into your organization, how you structure teams around it, that I'd encourage everyone to check out. As well, on the screen here, you can see we've got a couple contacts. If you didn't get your question, I'd encourage you to reach out to us directly and we can point you in the right direction. And with that, yeah, please stay tuned for future upcoming webinars. We're always putting these on and running topics. AI has been obviously a hot topic, and we'd love to continue doing more on this subject. So again, if you have ideas of what you'd like to hear us talk about, please let us know. Yeah, and everyone will receive a copy of this recording along with the attachments from today later as well. So thank you everyone so much for joining our webinar today, and we hope to see you in the future.
Thanks, everybody.